Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to a special edition of the Fantasy Warfare Tournament. Normally we are at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays and usually pre-taped, but life gets in the way as we've been experiencing the last couple weeks. Understandable, and thank you fans for being a part of this. This is Fantasy Warfare Tournament. If you were a first-time person watching this or listening to it, whether you're listening later on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere you get your podcasts from, or watching live right now on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook, we want to thank you for being a part of the show. Now, as we are live, because it is Thursday at 7:03, you can get involved with us and put in some comments. You can even vote this tournament and see who makes it through. The tournament we're going to talk about is 16 of the greatest finishers that involve striking. So you're looking at things like spears, the elbow drop, Styles Clash, DDT, tombstone, super kick, the cutters, whether it be RKO or diamond cutter. There's a whole bunch of them we're going to look at, 16 of them to be precise, and we're going to run it down in tournament style, telling what each move looks like and what we think would advance to the next round. So as I said, please feel free to put your comments in. Tell us what you think should be advancing. But we're going to start this off. But one first reminder before we bring in our panelists, because they're almost ready. I see one of them is there, Jonesy. Just remind everybody that we are sponsored by CoolBet. Stay cool, bet responsibly. And they are our sponsor for the Predictions League, the Scumbags Prediction League, which is available for each and every pay-per-view of WWE, NXT, Impact Wrestling, and AEW. So just join us, earn points, and win that championship by next year's WrestleMania. So CoolBet, thank you for being a part of the sponsorship. Stay cool, bet responsibly. And we'll bring in our first guy, Jonesy. He's in.
Hey.
Finally settled his new place. Got a little backdrop there, I see. Last week we did this live on the fly as well, and had a little technical issues, so I'm hoping everything is going to go a little bit smoother tonight. But how are you?
I'm pretty good. Ready to knock this one out of the park. Some of these moves I know a lot of people like, but I particularly hate. There's a couple of them here that I think are terrible moves that I wouldn't be surprised if there's some arguments.
Understandable, and it also depends on who is performing them, because I know one Steven, who's just logging in right now, probably hears and sees something like the Code Breaker of Jericho. That's probably going to not make it through to the next round unless you and I have a say in that, which we do. But we're going to talk to Steven. How are you, Steven?
Oh, it has been... I don't even know if I have the right one out. What one are we doing?
We are doing strikes, finishers.
So that's the one, Styles Clash, right?
Styles Clash.
Swanton?
Swanton.
Yeah. All right. I'm pretty sure I'm on the right one now. How's my camera? I'm sitting outside. I just want to make sure that...
Yeah, we can see you. It looks good. Are you here in London or are you back in Toronto?
I'm here in London, in lovely Byron.
Oh, Byron. I work in Byron. I had to leave Byron this morning to attend to my wife who was not well today. And you had, unfortunately, a family member who was not well yesterday. So,
it's still not going good.
Oh.
So at any point, I may have to run.
Understandable. So we can hopefully rely on some fans to log in and do this, but we're also going to run through it as quickly as we can because they're just finishers. We're not talking about a whole lot of career highlights. So let's run that video and break down the bracket.
Oh, look, a cardinal. Oh, that's nice.
So there you saw the video. So let me just pull up mine because it's easier to read. So match 1 is Styles Clash versus Swanton. Match 2 is Tombstone versus DDT. Match 3 is RKO Cutter versus Codebreaker. Match 4 Spear versus Elbow Drop. Match 5 is Pedigree Powerbomb. Match 6 is Stunner Super Kick. Match 7 is Canadian Destroyer GTS. Match 8 is Rock Bottom Frog Splash.
Excellent. So yeah, a lot of different people represented in there. From Shawn Michaels, Kenta is the one I put in the video for the GTS. Of course, people know CM Punk, and various frog splashes from Eddie and RVD, you name it. So we'll see who comes out on top. We'll start off with matchup number 1 as I get rid of the other screen. And it is the Styles Clash against the Swanton Bomb. So Styles Clash, obviously named after AJ Styles, but he basically picks somebody up from the waist, and they're facing both the same direction, so to say, at the hard camera. But AJ's standing on his feet while the opponent is facing downwards. AJ hooks his legs around the arms and basically plants down, and hopefully the person taking the maneuver has his head bent back enough that he's not actually getting a face buster and getting real damage, because that has happened in the past. And so basically this move was innovated by Colonel De Beers, and people would know him possibly from AWA. And there's been variations of it. Michelle McCool had the Faith Breaker, and Cesaro used the variation of it called the Neutralizer, where he actually cradles the person's and locks them around their legs and through their crotch and plants down. So it's pretty much the same move. We're using the word Styles Clash for this. It's taking on the Swanton Bomb. So most famously, Jeff Hardy, but it's essentially coming off the top and going straight down, almost like a swan, and then turning just in time to get your shoulders and your head hitting your opponent, and you're rolling off. A lot of people have done it before, and Jeff coined it as a phrase of Swanton because of how it looked for him. Just looking at these two, though, moves, I think the one that does most damage is probably going to be something on the lines of the Styles Clash, because Swanton, you're only getting hit with your opponent's shoulders and not a full-on body press. So for myself, I'm going with Styles Clash. Steven.
Oh, I'm going Styles Clash as well. I think it's just a better move.
Jonesy, is it a clean sweep?
And just to let you know, Shawn, you're sounding like a gremlin. Personally, I think the Swanton is a much better move. The Styles Clash is one of those moves that I think is actually terrible. It does not look very good. You watch it, it does not look like it would actually hurt you. He's not able to actually, like, what is he doing to the guy? Trying to face plant him?
Yes.
Like it does not look like his face is actually touching, especially. I have a picture of AJ doing it to somebody here, and you can see the guy with his arms locked around AJ's ankles, and his head is up. So when he hits, his head is up. It's a terrible looking move, in my opinion, and it's not executed very well. The Swanton, depending on who does it, and Jeff Hardy does it absolutely fantastic. You can't forget that this guy has done it like from 20 feet above on a ladder, et cetera, and it may not hit every time, but it sure is a crowd pleaser. And really, that's two things that a finishing maneuver is trying to do: is impress the crowd, enhance the match, which is kind of the same thing, and then, of course, knock the guy out. That one, to me, is much better move, believable move.
Okay, well, unfortunately, Styles Clash, in your case, is moving on, but I totally get your points. Steven, Tombstone versus the DDT.
So obviously, Tombstone, that's the Undertaker. Everyone who's copied it since doesn't do it as good. And DDT to me is Jake Roberts. That's the first person, him and Arn Anderson, but really Jake Roberts because that was his finishing move. I'm going Tombstone just because I actually prefer that move.
Okay, and Jonesy.
I'm actually going with the DDT. Again, I think it's a better move. It looks like it hurts a hell of a lot more than the Tombstone. Depending on who does the Tombstone, the way the Undertaker originally did it, he actually used to hook his arm around the guy's kind of like this. It's kind of hard to show, but if you watch his early matches, he used to almost spike him down with it, and he only had one hand around his waist. I thought it actually was a much better looking move the way he originally done it. A lot of the times, especially when he just drops down to his knees, it does not look like it hurts that much. It's not done forcefully. Of course, we know why it's not done forcefully, because it would be a lot harder to do and not actually really hurt the guy. So that's why a DDT, especially if it's sold well, I think is just a more powerful and quicker pop move than the Tombstone that actually has a setup, where DDT doesn't have to have a setup.
Okay, well, yeah. I think I also saw Fit Finley in WCW using the Tombstone when he was.
Yeah,
the Belfast
he's
Bruiser.
used it as well. Yeah.
And then and it was interesting that WCW named it the Tombstone as well, even though that's a trademark of another company. So the thing is, I'm going to go with DDT as well, because nobody was out to ban the Tombstone Piledriver. There was motions to get the DDT banned from being used in wrestling when Jake was using it and stuff like that. Of course, obviously kayfabe, but there was a motion to get it banned, and that didn't happen with Tombstone. And there's variants of it with the double arm DDT that Foley and Moxley use. So yeah, I'm going with that, and also RKO, Randy Orton's version off the ropes is unique as well. So DDT is going to move on. Jonesy, you get to have the RKO or Diamond Cutter going against the Code Breaker.
Both of these moves, I think, are pretty good moves. The RKO cutter is grabbing the head of the opponent while facing away from the opponent and pulling forward while both parties land flat, grabbing the guy's neck, blam. And of course, the opponent is supposed to be landing on his stomach and face. The giver lands on his back. The Code Breaker is a face-to-face move. Wrestler jumps up while grabbing opponent's face and puts knees to the opponent's face and drops down, smashes the knees against the opponent's face. I could have worded that better, but hey. It's kind of hard, both of them. You can do pretty quick. They both look like they can hurt, even if you don't, especially if you don't do it right. I'm going with the cutter, the RKO, because even though the Code Breaker, mostly Jericho using that move, making it a name, the cutter is just faster, especially the fact that Randy Orton has done it in so many different ways and made a move that so many people have used and made it his own, where that one is a lot more surprising when it happens than I think the Code Breaker. And we don't like Jericho, so.
And I also am going to go with the Diamond Cutter, the RKO. Originally, I saw it as a Diamond Cutter before Randy Orton obviously started using it. And as we're going to discuss tomorrow with This Week in History, Triple H actually used it in his debut match coming to WWE as Hunter Hearst Helmsley. So it's a move that can be done out of nowhere. That's why you always see those memes of RKO out of nowhere on different other sports players, and when they do some sort of blooper reel, somebody's always putting that over top of that. So yeah, I'm going with the cutter, and I'm betting Steven is too.
Do I actually have to say it out loud, or?
Yeah, just to make it official.
Well, Hmm. Well, it's not going to be the fucking code breaker.
There we go.
But do you think the code breaker is a good move? Like, it looks pretty
No.
good. You don't think it
Maybe
looks
by
good?
somebody else?
No, I'm not a big fan of it. Even if it wasn't Jericho,
Okay.
I'm not. I don't like it. I think it's.
You think it's not a finisher, maybe just a stun move, a quick
Yeah,
stun?
because I've seen, especially New Japan, that's been used for a while, and especially if you watch COVID Jericho do it or Fatty, it's like this far. The opponent's face never comes to the legs or the knees, and half the time his fat ass couldn't get up high enough to make it look good, so it didn't matter.
Here we go.
But yeah, no, I think it's a. I've seen guys like some of the X Division guys who have copied it since, and it actually looks decent. But Jericho's fat ass just kind of falling back and just kind of putting a foot up. No,
Understandable. Matchup number 4 is the spear versus the elbow drop. Of course, the spear, originally probably most famously as the Gore by Rhino. Bill Goldberg using as a spear, Edge as a spear, and Roman Reigns doing the spear. Of course, obviously, opponent's down. The person hitting it is coming directly at you like a football tackle and knocking the wind right out of you. Always great hearing them, Joey Styles yelling, "Gore, Gore, Gore." But yeah, so it's the spear taking on the elbow drop. Of course, most famous elbow drop is coming from the Macho Man Randy Savage, up on the top rope and just sailing down and hitting you right in the sternum. It's been copied by Shawn Michaels, took it over. Of course, Bailey, I believe also Sasha Banks. There's a lot of people using the elbow drop, but it's a lot of times in tribute to Randy Macho Man Savage. Done the wrong way, the spear can really mess you up because we've seen what has happened to Goldberg. But, nothing beats seeing Randy Savage, especially when you were able to slow-mo it, having him dropping an elbow, especially on Hogan all the time. I'm going with the elbow drop. And, of course, people know I have a fondness for Randy Macho Man Savage anyways. Because
is it a fondness or a fantasy?
No. Not that way. Just he's what got me into wrestling. So
Like to shoot you down, brother.
That's right. So, Steven, your pick.
Oh, it's the elbow drop. I think anyone can do the spear, and I don't find it a realistic finisher. Playing football, it's not realistic. Where that elbow drop looks like it could kill you if you dropped it across the throat or on the face or the heart but the Gore. I mean, Rhino's looked good when he was in ECW, and I seen him perform it here at Fanshawe for I don't even remember if it was BCW or someone, but a lot of them don't look good, and it's just gotten. Everyone does a spear, and it's not a finishing move.
Understandable. And Jonesy.
I'm actually going pretty much the opposite of what he said. I do agree somewhat with what he said, but I find the elbow drop, unless it's Macho Man, it's not a finishing maneuver unless you actually hit him in the face with it. I see it more of a showing move that you could have done just standing up and not jumping higher. You just make sure you give it more when you go from the mat. The spear is a great move, of course, depending on who does it. I think Edge does it fantastic. Rhino's great at it. There's a few that are good at it. But
see, and I don't find Edge is any good anymore.
I think that like even Roman Reigns can hit it pretty good. I think it's a move that it's only good if both guys have their timing, because the one guy when the guy doing the spear, once he has him and lifts him up in the air, it's the other guy's job to sell it, sweeping his legs and going down hard. Then it looks like a great move. It looks like a finisher. If not, it can look like just a bad move. I'm gonna go with the spear because I think if done right, it's a much better looking move and it comes out of nowhere. And that's what I like about that move.
Yeah, just to counter what you were though saying with the elbow drop now not looking like a finisher, and that's unfortunate because too many things that were finishers are kicked out of nowadays. But obviously, it was a finisher when it was used by Randy Savage. The spear is no longer a finisher like it was when Rhino was using it,
or even Goldberg in his height of really. The spear wasn't his finishing move.
It was a setup.
But when he hits the spear, it was spear, jackhammer, good night.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Part of that finishing, but now it's every other person's hitting a spear, and every other person's not. I don't find I see as many elbow drops as I do spears. Like if I turned on to All Petite Wrestling at 8 o'clock, I would see probably 75 spears, 400 cartwheels, a few somersaults.
And that's going to come up with their matchup number 6 with the super kick. It was a finishing move, and now it's not. But it's in here because of it being a finishing move. But we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. So the elbow drop is moving on past the spear. Matchup number 5. Steven, you get to give us pedigree versus powerbomb.
So when you say pedigree, it's obviously Triple H, and powerbomb to me is always Kevin Nash. That's who makes me think of it.
Sid.
Yeah, I guess Sid. But if you said powerbomb, sorry,
Adam Bomb did it too.
No, he did the pump handle slam.
Okay, I thought he did it too, but
no,
his
he did
name's
the pump
Adam
handle.
Bomb. How could he not do it?
Well, because he had the atomic bomb, which is the pump handle slam. Dumbass. I mean, here's another move: the power bomb, jackknife power bomb that used to finish matches. Now it's like a handshake at the start of the match. Everyone gets a power bomb, usually off the top rope through 14 tables that are all flaming and have hypodermic needles somewhere in there, and then they get up and do a handshake after. The pedigree is obviously Triple H and Seth Rollins, because I don't really know, other than Stephanie McMahon when she was wrestling. Can you think of anyone else who does it?
No, it was limited, and which made it unique.
I'm going still powerbomb. I found the pedigree. I don't know. I like the move, but I could never really buy it other than Triple H during his big run of it actually being a finishing move, because he'd get the guy up and the guy's legs would, and it almost looked like he spiked them into some sort of pile driver type. And then as everyone started getting older, there was less and less jump to it. But the power bomb, when you had Kevin Nash, Diesel, Psycho Sid doing that, it was, you could almost buy that someone was getting knocked out, or at least at worst the wind being knocked out of them. Just the sheer force of the height, and I now understand wrestling a lot better, but as a kid, I actually thought they were being dropped on the back of their neck just based on the move. I mean, the Giant was, I saw that and I thought, oh, he's dead.
I was going to mention that.
But I mean, to me, it's the power bomb.
Okay, Jonesy, what's your pick?
I'm the power bomb too. I personally think the pedigree is one of the worst finishing moves in professional wrestling. It's a terrible move. And I agree the fact that it did look a lot better when he was younger, but a lot of the time, the guy is not even coming close to hitting the mat. And that's another move that it's more so the guy getting it done that has to sell that than the guy giving it. And a lot of people just can't sell that pedigree worth shit. So that's why I think the power bomb is such a better move that even if you screw it up, it's going to look like it hurts.
Yeah, the only time two times that I can say two bad power bombs happened was WrestleMania 11 when Diesel did it to Shawn, but of course that's one of his best friends, and unfortunately when Kevin Nash tried it on Big Slow, the Giant, that he nearly spiked him. But you know, you have everybody else, and even the other variant with Undertaker being the last ride and elevating it even further as a power bomb. Like, it's
look
more
at
devastating move than Triple H dropping to his knees. And a lot of times, as you guys pointed out, they missed having their face planted. Sometimes he'd let go of the underhook.
When he was younger though, and like all the guys were a lot younger, the pedigree was not as bad as it is now. I think some of our problem is we only see this high of a jump in it, then killing the guy. If you look at some of the old pedigrees, he did underhook, and it looked like it was going to be deadly, but that ended pretty quick. And now it's this high of a jump and let go of the arms, and everyone try to make as much noise as possible.
Yep. So Powerbomb is moving on 3-0, and we're moving on to our next one, matchup number 6, Jonesy, the Stunner versus the Super Kick. Essentially, Michaels versus Austin.
Yeah, the Stunner, it's a fast move. It looks painful, and it can also look silly if it's done to Mr. McMahon. Steve Austin made it famous, but it's been around for a long time. Other people have used it. The super kick, there's anticipation to it coming to the super kick, especially if Michaels is doing it. So I kind of like the fact that there's more build up to the super kick. But the Stunner, of course, if it was Austin, he gave the fingers. And that's why I got to let the Stunner go by, because it looks like it hurts. I think it's hard to not make it look like it hurts. But I think it can be screwed up pretty easily as well. But I got to go with the Stunner, especially given the fingers before you do it. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really great visual. Of course, McMahon's first Stunner just looked really ridiculous. But Steve Austin has stunned every member, including Linda, of the McMahon family, probably even Hornswoggle, for that matter. But
you think at Communion that they'll bring the kids by, Hunter's kids by, and Steve Austin will on their 13th birthday or something? You know?
Maybe like a bar mitzvah. Here's your Stunner.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. But yeah, so there's that. And now Kevin Owens does it. He got permission from Steve to do it, and Steve didn't like how he did it at first, but then told him how to do it properly. Super kick. I love Shawn Michaels. The moment of I love you. I'm sorry, I love you. The super kick to Ric Flair ending his career is going to go down in history. But then you get morons like Matt and Nick Jackson.
No, you're saying the wrong name. The Young Twins.
There we go. Who
or the Cowabunga Kids.
Yep, that too. Cucamonga Kids.
Oh yes, the Cucamonga Kids.
But yeah, you got those guys who just throw them out like it's giving out Halloween treats, and it totally just diminished the whole move. Lance Storm used to deliver a really good one, equal to Shawn Michaels, in my opinion. But
I actually think Lance Storm's was better.
I can accept that argument as well. But, you know, they were delivering super kicks that look good. Now they're just a regular thing, as I mentioned with the elbow drops. So I got to go with the Stunner. Steven.
I'm actually going super kick.
Wow.
If Owens didn't bring his version of a Stunner in, and then John Cena has his weird ass version of the stunner. It's actually watered it down too much because they don't know how to perform the move correct. It actually makes the move look a lot more not a finishing
vulnerable. More vulnerable. Yeah.
And I was just thinking, kind of the odd part is the guy who kind of created the stunner was John Laurinaitis.
Which, I mean, if like I said, if it didn't get moved on to
Steve Austin.
But I'm thinking if it was just Steve Austin, the stunner would get my vote because Austin could perform it. I don't like recycling of a move, and if they don't know what they're doing to make it look good. I mean, yes, the Cucamonga Kids and everyone else does super kicks, but looking at Lance Storm, Shawn Michaels, and not so much the over the top stand in the corner for 2 minutes and tap your foot, Shawn Michaels, but he would go up to the top. You knew he hit that switchblade elbow drop. Then he was in the corner. He'd nip up into the corner, super kick, 1, 2, 3. To me, the super kick looks more realistic that you could actually knock someone out. You're kicking the person in the jaw.
Yep, I can get that. Unfortunately, like you said, with others watering it down, Cucamonga Kids watered super kick down for me. So we go to
speaking of watered down moves.
Match number 7, the Canadian Destroyer. It was this came up with by Canadian P.D. Williams, and was a really good move. And he'd lock your head under, flip over, and you do the whole flip, and almost looks like a flipping pile driver when you execute it. And it was very rarely used. Now it's almost a thing used daily. Like Dustin Rhodes, as much as I'm a fan of Dustin, he's using it. And I'm just like, really?
Every wrestler's using it. Every wrestler uses that move.
Yeah, it's like a clothesline now. And then you got the GTS, which was designed by Kenta Kobayashi and taken by CM Punk. Wrestler on top of your shoulders in a fireman's carry position, and then dropped onto a knee, crushing into the face, and basically go to sleep. So as much as the Canadian Destroyer is a pretty move, GTS is more effective, almost like you said, with the super kick going right to your jaw. This is going to your temple, your nose, and has been seen to break somebody's nose if done improperly. But
I've also seen people knocked out with it.
Exactly. So I'm going to go with the GTS on this one and send it over to you, Steven.
I mean, I would love to pick the Canadian Destroyer because the first time I saw P.D. Williams do that move, I think every person who'd seen it for the first time was just in awe of what we just saw, because that was not something you saw every match. And then P.D. Williams, and then who else? Oh, every fucking wrestler uses that move now. So, no, it's GTS. I mean, unfortunately, the Canadian Destroyer was just prostituted out. I mean, I've seen them top rope GTS to the floor through 12 tables, and that's a break spot.
Yeah.
But when P.D. Williams hit it, it was impressive, and he would knock people out.
I think when you just mentioned about a top rope one, I don't know if it was fully that, but I remember being in Toronto at the Phoenix for a Northern tournament for Smash, and it was Mia Yim against Riddle, or Matt Riddle at the time, and it was almost a top rope Canadian Destroyer and then a kick to the face, and still a kick out.
Yeah, I just remember Petey Williams hitting that, and that was it. Now it's like, I'll do 12 Canadian Destroyers across the ring, then we'll do them this way. Like, it's just to the point of where it's ridiculous. So it's GTS.
Jonesy is a clean sweep. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm having congestion issues. The Canadian Destroyer, I think, is a much better move, more entertaining to watch. Yes, it's been prostituted out, but I much rather watch a shitty Canadian Destroyer over a good GTS. I personally think the GTS is one of those crappy magic moves that they try to use that unless you actually perform it for real, it just doesn't look good unless you've got the right camera angle, etc., etc. The Canadian Destroyer, pretty much anybody can do that move if you understand how it works. I had to watch it many, many times to kind of grasp it in my head, what was actually going on. To me, it looks like an optical illusion if it's done right. It's an amazing looking move. I think it's the best move on the list. Doesn't mean it's the best one that's going to win on the list, but I think it's the most unique, and it's got a lot going on it. So I got to go with the Canadian Destroyer. I think the GTS is fucking boring.
Well, as pretty as it is, it unfortunately got watered down, and Petey Williams could have taken it to the finals if it was only his move. And Steven, you want to finish off this bracket with the Rock Bottom against the Frog Splash.
So, again, we're talking two moves that I find have been abused by wrestling nowadays. Rock Bottom or the bookend, because Booker T kind of used it almost around the same time, I feel like.
Yep.
Am I right on that? That seems it was about the same time, I feel.
They were using it at the same time because it always seemed to be in WCW and WWE, there was somebody using the move each time, but only one person using the move.
I actually don't like that move. I just find it too, like, they have to be helped to do that move. I just find it very not quick and or entertaining. Frog Splash, I mean, you've got Eddie Guerrero, obviously, to me, is the one who, if you said the move, that's the name that brings it to attention for me. Again, it's a move that's now been used by everyone. I'm still going Frog Splash because it was, or the 5-star Frog Splash by RVD. To me, especially when RVD does it, he hits and then he like flips up and he grabs his ribs like he actually did it. So I just find that much more, to me, more realistic as a finisher. Because the Rock Bottom always led to, I don't ever really remember him pinning people at the Rock Bottom because it was always seen by the people's elbow.
Yeah, the bookend usually was more of the finisher than that. But Jonesy, what's your pick?
There we go. The Frog Splash by a mile. The Rock Bottom, I think, is a boring move. I liked it when Big Boss Man did it because his setup actually had the guy running towards him and then he'd do it. But the standing Rock Bottom, and then he would use the friggin' people's elbow, which to me, if the move worked, why are you using an elbow to wake him up? Because that's basically what you're doing. I never understood that combination. And the Frog Splash, I think D'Lo Brown also did a really good one. And it looked good because he was a little heavier. So he had more force coming down. So the frog splash.
Yeah, then when you have D'Lo wearing it, he was wearing his chest protector. Right now, you got Dominic Mysterio doing it in honor of Eddie, and of course, one that is looking really good right now is from the Street Profits, Montez Ford, and he gets so much height out of his and turns. It's a thing of beauty compared to the Rock Bottom. Steven,
Who did
while we're on this-
who did the frog splash that turned? He'd jump and then midway.
Was
land
that
the other
RVD? RVD would do that a lot.
Well, that's because he never actually set his opponent up. He just put him wherever and then jump and hope and pray. Okay, so round one, we had Styles Clash beat Swanton 2-1, DDT beat Tombstone 2-1, RKO Cutter beat Codebreaker 3-0, Elbow Drop beat Spear 2-1, Powerbomb beat Pedigree 3-0, Stunner beat Super Kick 2-1, GTS beat Canadian Destroyer 2-1, Frog Splash beat Rock Bottom 3-0, setting up a second round of Styles Clash DDT. RKO Cutter versus Elbow Drop. Powerbomb versus Stunner. GTS versus, Frog Splash.
Yeah, so obviously, Jonesy, you're surprised that probably the Canadian Destroyer didn't make it through. Anything else surprised that did not advance that you thought would have? And I'm just going to throw this out to people watching and listening right now. Throw a comment and let us know how you think we're doing so far on breaking this down. But any surprises, guys?
I didn't like the fact that the Styles Clash made it through. That befuddles me. The setup, I love. I think it should be more. He drops down and then turns it into almost a modified Boston Crab. That would make sense because it just does not look. The only thing it's doing is maybe giving the guy a pink belly. It just does not look good, in my opinion. And maybe I haven't seen the right guy do it because I don't think AJ does it very well.
Steven, anything on your end?
I'm surprised the Code Breaker didn't win.
Sure you are.
I mean, I thought the Tombstone would win, but I knew that would be a tough one because it's DDT Tombstone.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next matchup in the first match of the second round, should I say. Jonesy, you want to tell us about the Styles Clash and DDT pick?
The DDT is a simpler move as far as having to set it up. It's a lot quicker. The Styles Clash has more setup. I do like the spot where he wraps the guy's arms around with his ankles. It's just the payoff to me isn't very good. So I got to go with the DDT because the payoff, you can sell it a hell of a lot better, that move, than the way that you land with the Styles Clash. The only thing you can do is like grab your face or whatever. So to me, the DDT is just better for camera and a lot quicker of a move.
Yeah, so if people were watching, I also picked DDT as my pick for this. Jake Roberts always did the short arm clothesline and then picked him up and did the DDT there. Of course, I mentioned the double underhook ones, but Styles Clash not as easily gotten into as a quick DDT can be. So I'm going with that. Steven, is it a clean sweep or were you picking Styles Clash?
Clean sweep. I like the Styles Clash. It's against the DDT, so
Understandable. So we go on to our next one, and it's the RKO Diamond Cutter move against the elbow drop. Got to go with the RKO Cutter just because it can be done from out of nowhere. And there's so many different variations. I've seen DDP do it. I think it was on Raven through a table for off the second rope and stuff like that. it's so much easier to do rather than having to get your opponent down, get them in a prone position, hope the heck they stays there long enough for you to climb the top rope, do your pose, especially if you're Randy, and then do your leaping off the top turnbuckle. And it's a move that you can crash and burn and blow out your elbow if you do it wrong as well. So, yeah, I'm going with the RKO cutter. Steven?
I'm going elbow drop. I just think the cutter's used way too much. Everyone uses the cutter. If it was only Orton and DDP, then we'd be talking different. But every person uses
Cody.
a cutter, and it's just like I could turn on All Petite Wrestling here in 10 minutes and see 300 cutters, and none of them are a finisher. So to me, it's not a finishing move anymore. At least the elbow drop, I would consider a finishing move.
Jonesy?
Well, you know what I don't like about the elbow drop is it's given to the chest, which most don't sell it. If that really happened to you, you'd pop up and then fall back. A lot of them don't. There's just, I'm knocked out. I don't think it would knock you out. You'd be gasping for breath. Mind you, the elbow drop is a lot easier for the cameraman and anyone wanting to snap a picture because the RKO can come out of nowhere. So I got to go with the RKO because, again, it's one where it can be used as a finisher, or it can be something that can buy the guy time to, get back into the match. So I got to go with the RKO on that.
Okay, so RKO moves on to face DDT in the semifinals, and that sets up our next one, which is the Powerbomb versus Stunner. Steven?
I'm going to go Powerbomb. I just think it's a more impressive finishing move. Again, if it was just Steve Austin, we'd probably be talking a different outcome for me, but you just watch Kevin Owens and John Cena's second rope spinning, kind of grab the guy by the head and hug. Like, it's not, to me, a finishing move anymore. So I'm going Powerbomb.
Jonesy?
Yeah, I agree. The Powerbomb, it also has, I think it can be modified a heck of a lot more than the Stunner can be. Even Kevin Nash, when he debuted as Oz, the power type of power bomb that he gave there was he lifted him up, and then with one arm he actually spun him as he went down to the mat. And certain wrestlers, I'm trying to think who it was. I think it was Kevin Nash that gave it to the guy like 3 or 4 times in a row. It might even have been Mikey Whipwreck that had it done to him by somebody, but it's one of those where you can do it and then hold it, pick up the guy and do it again and again. I think it's a fantastic move.
Yep, and somehow we lost Steven. I don't know what happened to him. But yes, so for me, Powerbomb is going through, and hopefully we can still at least do some texting to Steven. You want to send him a message asking, but there he is.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I spilled water and I went to clean it up and I hit a button and then I was like, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs.
Oh, like we said last week,
you have SpaghettiOs?
There is still SpaghettiOs.
Jonesy, you want to do GTS versus Frog Splash?
Frog Splash. Again, the GTS, I just find it to be a boring move unless you're going to actually do it for real, because it just does not look. It does not look good in wrestling. Looks a lot better in real fighting, but not in wrestling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Frog Splash as well. It just looks prettier, and it as much as it has been done, it hasn't been overly embarrassed, should I say, in certain things, like we talked about the Canadian Destroyer. So I'm going with that to move on to go against the Power Bomb. But Steven, is it a clean sweep, or is there hope for the GTS?
I love the GTS, but I'm gonna go Frog Splash.
Okay, so this sets up our semifinals.
So we had DDT beat Styles Clash 3-0. Cutter RKO beat the Elbow Drop 2-1. Powerbomb beat Stunner 3-0. Frog Splash beat GTS 3-0, setting up DDT versus Cutter RKO. Powerbomb versus Frog Splash.
Excellent. So some really good moves here. You're looking at some top superstars still also available using them. And I will start off this one with DDT against the Cutter. Almost the same sort of move in a way, except for one has going two different directions. One with the face away from you, one going along with you. Just the diversity of how the RKO and Cutter can be done compared to the DDT, needing more of a setup just to get in that position where your head is underneath the arm. I'm going with the RKO Cutter. Steven.
I'm going DDT. I just think the DDT looks better.
Jonesy?
Yeah, except for Randy Orton, the DDT, especially if it's sold right, it can look devastating. So I got to go with DDT.
Okay, so DDT moves on to the finals, and we'll see who is doing the other one. Steven, Frog Splash versus Powerbomb.
Powerbomb. I'll be right back.
Okay.
But it's Powerbomb.
Jonesy?
I'm going with the Power Bomb as well. The Frog Splash looks pretty and everything, and it might even be better for the crowd because you don't get that many top turnbuckle moves, at least not years ago. So the Power Bomb.
Yeah. So in my case, I love the Power Bomb. Guys like Kevin Nash and Sid were a couple of my favorites, especially using that. And I mentioned the Last Ride with Undertaker doing his version of it. Frog Splash, so pretty to be able to, especially when RVD did it, because he'd just hit your opponent maybe with a rolling senton and then leap up quickly from the mat to the top rope and then stretch out, which made it a visual how he did the combination that way. But my vote really doesn't matter, and it's going to be the finals with the Power Bomb against the DDT. I'm just getting my notes here. And any thoughts on that? How it worked out there, Chris?
Not really. The Power Bomb, Frog Splash, it is hard to decide between the two, but for me, the Power Bomb is kind of like a staple. If you're a big guy, you should be able to do it. And the lighter the guy, I think the more devastating it can look. I think the DDT is easier to not screw up, and even if you do, it can still look, painful. Where the Power Bomb, if you screw up, you can break a guy's neck a lot easier, and it can also look terrible if the person getting it done doesn't hold themselves up as they're coming down.
So that brings us to our finals.
Which way I think the Undertaker's was one of the safer ones, because holding them, that made sure that they could not bend backwards, and screw up the move.
Oh, with the last ride and being able to
Yeah,
stretch
when he
him
was
and
able to
drive
hold
him
guys
down.
like Jeff Hardy and that, and he could blam.
But they were getting quite the wedgie at times because he was pulling out trunks when he raced them above their head. He wasn't holding any body parts; he was holding clothing. So we have DDT against Powerbomb, and you get to make the pick.
Again, it's a hard one. The DDT to me can be. It looks more painful as far as the guy's face or top of the head, depending how it's sold, is driven into the mat. But the power bomb can be done where not only is it a finisher, but it also results in a pinning position, and you've knocked the wind out of the guy and you're holding him down. That's why I got to go with the power bomb.
Yeah, and I was just sitting here thinking for a second, and it dawned on me. We talked about the powerbomb being the last ride. We talked about the jackknife powerbomb, Sid's powerbomb, but oddly enough, we didn't mention Ahmed Johnson. The Pearl River plunge was pretty much a pile drive. I mean, a
Sit
powerbomb
down,
because
yeah.
he underhooked, turned up, and he sat down with it and got his legs into a position to do the pinning. Because when you said about how you can get into a pinning position with it, made me think of the Pearl River plunge. And so that's kind of a power bomb too.
Yeah, I
Love
agree with you on that. Now, I Ahmed Johnson honestly is not a name that comes to my mind when I think of wrestling because he had such a short burst in WWF and then his career kind of went to the shitter.
Yeah, and then if you saw him Big T in WCW, and
Yeah, because he was pretty good in WWF at the beginning. He was mean looking, he could wrestle, but then.
And now he doesn't even look like himself anymore. You wouldn't recognize him on the street. Just twice the size of from when he was Ahmed Johnson. So Tony Norris, yeah, not the same guy anymore. But I'm agreeing because of that thought with Ahmed, and odd that this is making the decision, but our winner tonight is going to be the Powerbomb. Just so many different variations that can be done with it instead of just the head between your arm and dropping down. So
And
as
it's
lethal as
ironic that the
DDT is,
Powerbomb won because Steve apparently was taken out by a DDT.
may have. But yeah, so we'll catch up with Steve hopefully tomorrow with the regular podcast. And we're going to make it a special 45th birthday celebration. So bring your alcohol. I got a whole table full of alcohol right here. And so, yeah, and also a fridge. So bring your alcohol, bring your well wishes, bring your comments about wrestling and talent. Come on and be a part of the show because, hey, we like doing spontaneous interviews, as you've seen recently with Pretty Ricky and Rex Atkins. So we'd love to have you be a part of it. Speaking of Rex, he is the subject of Stephen O'Neill's Slugging with Steven, which can be found on cwnonline.ca. And he does that weekly write-up, 10 questions with talent. Right now, I think basically it's been the Ontario indie talent or just independent talent in general that he's been fortunate enough to reach out to and get these questions answered. Hopefully, progress. But that is a weekly thing, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. on cwnonline.ca. And he's been doing really good with putting those together. And then, of course, tomorrow at noon, what do we got, Chris?
We have the history of wrestling, and it would be the week of May
14th.
There we go, 14th to the 20th.
Yeah.
Not too sad of a week, not too many deaths, if I recall. So
a lot of birthdays.
A lot of birthdays, that's right. It was a lot of
Which made me
birthdays.
think about doing a birthday celebration tomorrow at 8 o'clock for the podcast. Also, during the podcast, we'll look at WWE's offering of WrestleMania Backlash and the results from that. I'm just going to remove Steven for a moment until he comes back, if he comes back, and just have us there. So, yeah, and just a reminder, we are on Pro Wrestling Tees, prowrestlingtees.com/Scumbags Wrestling, where you can buy t-shirts. T-shirts right now for April and May are funds going to Jordito's recovery. 7-year-old little guy battling cancer, had to have surgeries involving his legs, needing help recuperating to walk better again. And of course, the comic book cover, 22 stars of the independent wrestling scene here in Ontario, designed by Nigel Lewis. And those shirts will always go to Steven's wrestling journey. Steven was actually on The Bump with WWE earlier today. Just after 11 o'clock, I'd magically found myself at home and watching it at that time. They were talking Kevin Owens, and then they brought in Steven Spice. So Steven's got a charity with Steven's Wrestling Journey. Going to have details tomorrow for his next venture and goal for raising funds. And we'll give you more detail on that. I've been talking with his mom over the last couple of days and the weekend. And so we'll definitely get that. So be sure to buy our t-shirts at prowrestlingtees.com/Scumbags Wrestling. And I also talked to his mom about the fact that when we do get back on the road to going to indie shows, we're going to look to get another comic book cover designed by Nigel Lewis. And Steven's going to help pick some of the talent that get put on that shirt. So be sure to watch for that once restrictions start lifting and shows get back to bingo halls, auditoriums, bars, armories, wherever you get your independent wrestling from. So you got anything else you want to plug before we get out of here, Jonesy?
As always, I'd like to thank CoolBet for being our tag team partner, if you will, and sponsoring us. Of course, CoolBet, stay cool and bet responsibly.
Excellent. So, yeah, thank you definitely to CoolBet for being part of that. And next week, we are going to, I saw this picture and ran it past Steven at least. I'm not sure if Jonesy had seen this picture. It was on Facebook recently, and it's actually the every Intercontinental Champion that has happened since, I believe, 2016. And if you look at it, it's actually 16 different superstars. So it worked out perfectly, this picture did. And so we're going to put that into a tournament and see who's been the greatest Intercontinental Champion in the last 5 years. There's a good talent pool there, and we'll bring that to you next week when we break down another Fantasy Warfare. So join us tomorrow for This Week in History, 12 noon, and the Scumbags Podcast at 8 o'clock. Have a good one. If you want a variety of wrestling news and history, look no further than the Scumbags Wrestling family of shows. On Wednesday nights at 6 p.m., join Shawn, Steven, and Jonesy as we look for the best of the best and break it all down in a unique tournament format on Fantasy Warfare Tournament. Then Thursdays at noon, take a look back at the rich history of our great sport with This Week in History. Relive title changes, births, deaths, and some of the best events of all time. Finally, join us for the latest in wrestling news,